let's talk about some lesser covered civilizations. Hi everyone. I make videos about obscure ancient people. Most of the time, we focus on famous civilizations like the Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Maya, Inca, Aztecs, and Chinese. But there are thousands of other societies, from prehistory to the present day, whose stories are equally amazing. To celebrate that, let's take a whirlwind tour of several fascinating but lesser covered civilizations. First up, we have the Nabatean Kingdom, centered in the deserts of modern-day Jordan around Petra, which was their capital. They flourished from around 300 BCE until they were conquered by the Romans in 106 CE. The Nabatean Kingdom is most famous for their hidden city of Petra, carved into sandstone cliffs. Their whole civilization was pretty much hidden from the rest of the world until it was rediscovered by Western explorers in 1812. The Nabatean people were desert nomads who made huge engineering projects to bring water into the desert where they built their cities. And because they controlled important trade routes, especially for incense and spices, they became very rich. They also adapted their language and religion to fit in with the empires around them. While they may have been conquered by Rome, their culture lived on in the kingdoms of their neighbors. Next, we have the Kingdom of Axum, located in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea. This powerful East African kingdom lasted from around 100 CE to 940 CE. It started off as a smaller kingdom of the Aksumite people, but through conquest and trade, they grew into a massive empire with influence over the whole Horn of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. They had an advanced trading network over the Red Sea with Arabia and India, and they were also one of the first Christian kingdoms in the world. Adopting Christianity in around 330 CE, they minted their own coins, built impressive churches and monasteries out of massive stone blocks, and even had their own alphabet. Although the kingdom collapsed in the 10th century, their legacy of Christianity and culture continued on in Ethiopia until today. Back in Anatolia, in modern-day Turkey, we have the Hittite Empire. They ruled here from around 1600 to 1178 BCE, leaving behind a legacy of ironworking and politics. Unlike most Bronze Age empires, the Hittites were the first to master ironworking, which gave them a big advantage over their enemies. They made weapons and tools out of iron instead of bronze and campaigned all over Anatolia. One of their greatest victories was at the Battle of Kadesh, where they fought to a standstill against the Egyptians in one of the largest battles in ancient history. They also made the first known peace treaty with the Egyptians after the battle. But unfortunately, they disappeared in the 12th century BCE during the collapse of many empires, known as the Bronze Age collapse. We don't know exactly why their empire fell apart, but we think that it had something to do with the growing power of the sea, peoples, and the mysterious collapse of the Mycenaean civilization in Greece. Let's go back in time a little bit to the Indus Valley Civilization. This was a Bronze Age society in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, centered in the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. It flourished from around 3300 to 1300 BCE, which is earlier than any of the other civilizations that I mentioned so far. The Indus Valley people built great cities with impressive urban planning and public works like the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro and sophisticated sewage systems. They also used standardized weights and measures, suggesting a strong centralized government. They made beautiful jewelry out of precious metals and decorated their buildings with intricate carvings. But we still don't know how to read their writing system, so we do not know much about their culture or why their civilization collapsed in the middle of the second millennium BCE. Maybe they were lost at sea. Haha, just kidding. Let's travel to Colombia to talk about the Muisca Confederation. This society of several chiefdoms existed from around 600 to 1600 CE along the Altiplano Cundiboyacense, or the Bogota Highlands. They are best known for being the source of the El Dorado myth, the tale of a magical king covered in gold. When the Spanish conquistadors heard about this legend, they went to conquer the region and found the beautiful Muisca capital of Bogota, where they encountered the fierce but welcoming Zepa and the Coca. These two chieftains, along with the other members of the Confederation, put up fierce resistance against the Spanish for several decades. Unfortunately, smallpox brought over by the conquistadors devastated the native population and their resistance eventually collapsed. But before that, the Muisca had developed advanced gold work, including a ceremonial headpiece called a munitra, which inspired the El Dorado myth. Now let's go visit the Scythians. These nomadic horse-riding warriors lived in Central Asia from around 900 BCE to 200 CE. They were known throughout the ancient world for their skill in horsemanship and archery. The Scythians traveled all over Eurasia, including Iran, Afghanistan, Mongolia, and Eastern Europe. They buried their dead in magnificent kurgans, or burial mounds, filled with treasures such as gold, silver, bronze, and iron. These artifacts show just how wealthy and artistic the Scythians were, although they were mostly known as ferocious fighters. In fact, the Scythians were probably the first horse culture in the world. And they even had special saddles made to fit their horses better. And one of the Scythian kings even adopted the Persian title of the Great King. So clearly, they were not only warriors, but also great horsemen and kings. Next, we have the Zapotec civilization based in the Valley of Oaxaca, in modern-day Mexico. This society lasted from around 700 BCE to 1521 CE, when it was conquered by the Spanish. The Zapotecs were one of the first civilizations in Mesoamerica with a writing system that used logograms, or symbols representing words. They were also one of the first to develop a grid-based calendar, and a monumental urban center at Monte was a Zapotec city in the Oaxaca Valley that became a major religious and political center. It had 7 major platforms or terraces, with palaces, temples, and residences of nobility. The Zapotecs ruled over this region for over 2,000 years, although their power waned after Monte was destroyed around 850 CE. The Zapotec people lived on, however, and their descendants can be found among the indigenous people of Mexico today. Moving on to Cambodia, we have the Khmer Empire, which lasted from 800 to 214-31 CE. This empire was known for its incredible temples, especially Angkor Wat, which is still the largest religious monument in the world. The Khmer built vast irrigation networks and hydraulic city planning. The capitals of their empire were enormous, covering more than 100 square miles. They even had canals to transport goods and people around the city. Although the Khmer Empire eventually collapsed due to over-irrigation and wars with neighboring Thailand, their monuments and achievements live on. Next, we have the Sogdian traders. These merchants lived in Central Asia from the 6th century CE to the 11th century CE. They were mostly located along the Silk Road, a series of trade routes between China and the Mediterranean. Because of their location, the Sogdians acted as middlemen for merchants traveling between east and west. They carried goods like silk, porcelain, ivory, and spices. The Sogdians weren't only merchants, though. They were also transmitters of culture and ideas between the different regions of Asia. They spread Buddhism from India to China and helped transmit new technologies and scientific ideas. They were an integral part of the Silk Road network, and their culture enriched the societies that they interacted with. And finally, let's finish with the Chola dynasty. This maritime empire was located in southern India from the 9th century to the 13th century CE. The Cholas controlled the Indian Ocean trade routes between India, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. They were great sailors and built seafaring ships that could carry huge amounts of cargo. They also built beautiful bronze sculptures of Hindu deities and realistic portraits of their kings. One of their greatest rulers was Raja Chola the Great, who conquered much of southern India and northern Sumatra in Indonesia. His successors continued to expand the empire until it collapsed in the 13th century due to invasions from the Pandya's and the Cheras. But their legacy of trade and art lived on in southern India for centuries. So these are just a few of the hundreds of lesser-covered civilizations that have amazing stories to tell. Which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you learned something new. Click here to watch another one of my videos. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Till next video, enjoy your time with History Revealed channel.